Paradox did something spectacular. They made those worst support companies even worse than they already are. And we can already start with the Motorized military police. That's definitely an F tier. Okay, it's not as bad as maintenance companies. There we go. I've already ranked all of the support companies. Videos in the description. There's no point in yapping about them again. Everything is still the same. Regardless, I yapped about how military police are absolutely useless because they are, you know, like, it's military police. You're not supposed to use them in divisions. So now Paradox added motorized military police, which are just the same. I don't think I have to really talk about this. Like, it's military police. Even if it's motorized, it's still not something you put into your division. That's just for suppression, and there we go. Ooh, it is better. You get more suppression value, so. And we already come into something very interesting. The heavy artillery and the self-propelled heavy artillery. These are also a bit weird to evaluate because they are, honestly, they are kind of worse than normal artillery. They technically deal more damage, but if you're already building artillery for your normal divisions, then you won't really mind it to use support artillery. With this, you have to manage another piece, the super heavy artillery. It does cost more IC and MIOs, and you're not using this for just soft attack. That's absolutely stupid. You use this for the extra collateral damage, and even that is just kind of useless. Let's say you're playing a miner and you don't have access to nukes or any special strat bombing, and there's the Allies with 60 divisions in 1980 stacked in Jerusalem, and you have to push through there. Then I guess you can use super heavy artillery. Apart from late game against the AI, it's just too expensive. Honestly, yeah, I'm gonna knock it down to B tier. Just because it is so much more expensive, but it technically still has a use, even though you have to research it and all that, so. Now we come to the helicopters, which is something that people are very excited about. We have 4 different helicopter companies. 3 of them, the field hospitals, the logistics, and the Recon, just replace existing ones. And then we have the normal helicopter company that you can use with any other company. And we're gonna start with the easy one, Helicopter Recon Company. And that one is just worse than normal Recon. Now, technically, you know, you have more stats than Cav Recon. But again, look at the production cost. And that's infantry equipment. Infantry equipment you have anyway. And then, because, you know, Cav Recon you don't use anyway. Let's compare that with Rangers, which is something that you use. And oh, look at that. It has less soft attack. It has less terrain modifiers. It costs a fuck ton more. It costs fuel. Legitimately, Recon, Helicopter Recon, that is F tier. The helicopter transports, that's a very interesting one because it is more expensive and you do use more fuel, but it does give you less supply, or more supply. Your units will require less supply when using this one. Apart from the additional IC, it is pretty much an upgrade over normal logistics. So I'm gonna put it into A tier. It does the same thing that logistics does. You do lose fuel, but fuel you can just import or build. But supply, if you really need supply, then you are gonna need a helicopter recon. Transport, helicopter transports. The next thing is the helicopter Med-E-Vac, which is honestly more of a single player thing. Multiplayer is not gonna want this because multiplayer uses field hospitals for the less XP loss. The Med-E-Vac pretty much flips it around. With the Med-E-Vac, you do lose less men, or you have more trickle back, but you keep less XP. If you really need manpower, you can use the Med-E-Vac, and it is situationally better or worse depending on what you need. The big thing, again, it is much more expensive. Trucks you already have anyway. You also need to research it. But one thing that is very cool is the normal helicopter. The normal helicopter brigade is a completely unique support company. This means, there we go, we can assign the helicopter Med-E-Vacs and the normal helicopter brigade, which both give you trickleback. The normal helicopter brigade gives you trickleback, recon, and supply. It's pretty much a combination of logistics, field hospitals, and recon. Now, admittedly, I don't give a shit about the free recon here. Like, recon is a very weird stat that sometimes is worse, but this one you want for the additional supply usage and the additional trickleback. And just because it gives you supply, I will put it into A tier as well. Below logistics, because logistics still gives you more supply, this one can technically replace replace logistics if you don't need all of the buffs from logistics, but even if it doesn't, it can still help you with logistics. So if you really need the additional supply, this thing is just gonna be very nice because more supply means less penalties, and then you're gonna be happy. Technically, you could even put it above logistics because this one helps you even if you're not sitting in no supply areas. It's a jack of all trades, master of none, so it's your logistics company 2.0 if you really need another logistics company. Now the armored maintenance. There we go. It is a little bit weird because the armored maintenance does give you more stats and also a ton more equipment capture ratio. Like, look at this. This one has 32% equipment capture ratio, but it also gives you a lot less reliability, which again, you don't really care about in your maintenance, but that's besides the point. The one issue is just, again, the production cost. 250 more than maintenance companies, but it gives you twice as much equipment capture ratio. Like, if you want to play with some looting divisions, you could technically use this, but that's in such a weird spot where I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I don't really want to. I just want to build my own divisions. It is better than maintenance companies, even though it's more expensive, which also makes it worse than maintenance, because the only argument for maintenance is that if you're playing a nation that doesn't have a lot of industry, you can use it, but it's very expensive. So, like, armored signal. Why? It is absolutely useless. Like, straight up, that is an F tier. Number 1, signals, you just have to research normally. Armored signals, you have to research via special projects. Normal signals give you more initiative, which is the only thing you care about when you pick signal companies. Sure, the other stats are nice, but you pick your signal companies so they give you initiative. Otherwise, you would pick any other support company with your tanks and your divisions that need to reinforce. Sure, this thing does give you breakthrough, but you don't really care about breakthrough on your tanks because your tanks are spec'd into soft attack to deal the most damage, and multiplayer cares about hard attack. Breakthrough you just get passively by it being a tank. And then we come to the armored engineers, which are also just bad. Like, technically, some terrains they are performing better in urban environment. If you really want to, you can switch them out if you fight in cities, but like, what the fuck is the point? Are you really gonna, when you're standing in front of Berlin, tell your guys, alright guys, we're gonna stop now. I want all of our armored engineers to come in here and all of the normal engineers, they can leave. No! And once again, look at the production cost compared to normal engineers. Now there's still one other company here, and that one does have a use. Assault engineers. They do have a couple more terrain modifiers compared to normal engineers. You guessed it, if you're using engineers in the offensive divisions, then the assault engineer company is very good. Every infantry gets 10% breakthrough, and thoughts, river, you know, like, you trade defensive for offensive. So just for that, I am gonna put it, I guess, above engineers. Like, this one is pretty much a replacement for engineers. Just if you use them offensively, then you're just gonna use these. Technically, all around, I would still prefer normal engineers over those. So actually, yeah, let's put this one here just because normal engineers you can always use. And then these ones are just for your assault divisions. And I mean, for those, they are really good, but you know. And now we come to the one that can fall into every single one of those categories here, if I'm being honest. The Land Cruiser. Please take a look at those stats. Keep them in your mind. Voila! The Ratte does have better stats in pretty much all categories, except for HP. And that is just because there's one infantry in there. Like, for a proper division, you would probably use a 10 width. And then you could technically also put some field hospitals on there, some flame tags and all that. But the big problem for the Land Cruiser is not even the terrain modifiers. Like, the terrain modifiers for the amount of stats that the Land Cruiser gives you are perfectly fine. And once again, look at those stats. This one costs 330 IC. For the 25 width division, I spent 720 IC. Plus, this one still needs AA because the Land Cruiser has it already built in. And then we're at 10,000 manpower compared to the 2,000 here. If we're purely looking at stats and IC, the Land Cruiser is insane. The problems come up when we look at anything other than that. Number 1, you do have to research the 1934 heavy chassis, the 1940 heavy chassis, the super heavy tank chassis, and then depending on what you want to put onto your Ratte, you also need, you know, for example, for this one, we need the Schwere Gustav. And it's just so much research investment that I find it hard to put this thing into S tier, even though just looking at stats and the costs for the stats, it should be an S tier. If you don't rush this thing, if you just get it relatively normally in a normal game, you would get get this into in 1943, maybe 1942. If you rushed for it, you could probably get it into in early 1942, but then you still have to produce it, and you can only put 5 factories on this, and even if you could put more on this, your industry wouldn't allow this. If we only have 2 factories on this, we produce 4 of those a year. Now, admittedly, that is because of production efficiency. We would produce 16 a year with 2 factories, but that's still 60 steel that's gone. And if you put 5 factories on those, that's 140 steel gone. 60 chromium, 60 tungsten. To get 6 of those a year. Again, if you can't get those things out, they're just gonna decimate. Especially if you're in a weird situation where you don't have many factories, but you have a lot of resources. Then this thing is gonna perform. People don't play past 1945 normally, you know? Like, not everybody is like me who plays Australia for 35 hours in one campaign. No, most people quit before that. So they would get like 1 or 2 years worth of a land cruiser out of there. And you need 3 land breakthrough mana for that. And then you have to invest all of the resources, and like, realistically, you're not gonna use that thing very much. If you can use it, it's an S tier. If you can't use it, it's just so much wasted IC, so I think I'm gonna put it into B tier because it's just so hard to really evaluate, because I don't think it's not really worth it for all of the research you have to pour into this thing. Compared it to the flame tank. And the thing is, you also don't want to put this into any of your bigger divisions, because the bigger divisions will suffer from the terrain penalties. Ignoring any of the costs associated to it, it is an S tier, but the costs really drag it down. Since you watched the entire video, why don't you subscribe? Or you watch my other video where I ranked every single support company as I mentioned at the start of the video.